Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week. And this is a show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And before I get started, at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week. So in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured. Also be sure to comment, like, subscribe. It really does help the channel. So let's jump in. I had a pretty average sized haul with 12 books I believe we had. And number 12 for me is Marvel Zombies, issue 1. I honestly don't think I've ever read a Marvel Zombies book fully. I probably have read issues here and there as issues have gone out, especially back issues I've read with Marvel Zombies, but it's never been my vibe. I picked this more up because I like the creative team. I like the writers. They're the same writers from Don't Kill Your or Just Kill Your Darlings. So I enjoyed that book. So I was like, let me give this one a shot. I'll say, you know, if you like the zombie aspect of Marvel, you'll like the funness of this. I think they have enough of an emotional core to get you through the issue. I just felt like the artwork could have been a little stronger. I think there was gore, but I just want a bit more of like what we got with Predator. I feel like that is a stronger art style for something like this. And for me, the story just didn't do it. It wasn't something I felt too attracted to. And I feel like there's so many titles like this that nowadays, like these Elseworlds where you get to see the Marvel Universe goes against something, obviously with the Predator story also coming out this week. So it just feels a little bit like overdoing it. So giving this one 2 stars, and that is number 12. All right, moving on to number 11, which is Blink and You'll Miss It, issue 2. I will say I read this issue when I was catching up with books when I wasn't having the show. So I was binge reading a lot, and I remember enjoying the issue when I was reading it. But when I read this, I kind of forgot what the story was about. And then, you know, midway through, I remembered what the first issue was about. But that was mostly the vibe. It was just, it was a little forgettable. And as I got to the end of this issue, it didn't hook me enough to feel like I wanted more of the ride. I also feel like it's mostly because of the art. It is very gritty and it's hard to get into. So overall, giving this one 2.5 stars. I wanted to enjoy it a bit more than I did, but again, it's when you're reading so many books, you have to make some cuts, and this one didn't get me enough to have a hook for the next issue. All right, moving on to number 10. Talking about the Marvel Universe situation as Predator kills the Marvel Universe, issue 2. The reason I got this was because I really liked the Spider-Man vs. Predator books. I was pleasantly surprised by how they balance story with action, and I feel like with this, there's so many characters you have to focus on, it's a little harder. There's one section with the X-Men, and then you have the Fantastic Four, and it just doesn't sink my teeth into the story as much. I like the action, I like the art. I might pick up that next issue depending on the week, but it's just not doing it as much as I felt with the Spider-Man story that had a little bit more of a cohesive vision. So giving that one 2.5 stars, and then it's number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, a book I was really looking forward to, but kind of let me down, and that is The Incredible Hulk, issue 29. I've been sticking with this series for a long time because there's something about it that I do like. I like the monster element. I really enjoyed Immortal Hulk, and there's some feeling of that series here and some reminiscence of that series. But overall, I feel like they dig into the mythology so much that they forget the characters along the way. Like I wanted definitely a lot more from Betty and Hulk here, and I just didn't get that emotion as much as I expected, even though they delved into the mythology of Hulk and where that gamma radiation comes from. That wasn't as interesting to me as those two characters, and that's where I feel like has been a little bit missing from the series for a while. So we'll see how long I stick around for this one. So I'm gonna give that one 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. All right, moving on to number 8, which is the Slashers Apprentice, issue 5. I like this series overall. It's, you know, your twist on the slasher, this character who was the final girl who became obsessed with the slasher character, and there's some interesting twists and turns here. I'll say there's some telegraphed with what the title is about, but I had a fun enough time with the series, and I thought the artwork was really strong throughout as well. So I thought it ended in an interesting place, and we'll see if this series continues in any way. But if you like slashers, I think it's different enough than what we've seen in previous slasher stories, and definitely loves the genre. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 8. All right, moving on to number 7, which is the Uncanny X-Men issue 21, a bit higher than we've been getting. That's mostly because I feel like I had a focus. I like that it was more about one of the new students and his relationship with his father and their family. And then there's some other stories with the other students, but it's not as large. And it just felt a little bit more focused with really, really solid artwork. So giving that one 3 stars, and that is number 7. All right, moving on to number 6, which is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 12, a lot higher than that previous issue and most of the issues, because I feel like the artwork was a lot stronger. I'm gonna be honest, that's a big reason why a bit higher. And I felt like there was a little promise with Norman being Spider-Man. I will say out of the past couple of years of Spider-Man, Norman being the Gold Goblin and his character has been the most interesting because he's been the most different than what we've seen, and his relationship with Peter has been really interesting. And I liked his interaction with the other spider heroes who are like, Norman, we're gonna hurt you, and then he kind of pleads his case, and I enjoyed that element with the art being a little bit stronger here as well. Will I say that I think it's doing everything it can with Norman being Spider-Man? No, I definitely want a lot more, but I'm hoping this is an introduction to maybe something bigger as the series goes on. So I'm gonna give this 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is the Fantastic Four issue 3. I am not personally following World Under Doom, but I like this as someone who's not following World Under Doom and still understanding what's going on in the story as the Fantastic Four goes up against Dr. Doom in their own scientific way. And I've been enjoying the voice for this. I enjoy Humberto Ramos's artwork for this as well. And I'm glad there was a second chance to jump onto the series because I was hearing a lot of great things and I didn't really know a place to jump on. This was a perfect place to do so. So I'm enjoying the voice and where they're taking these characters. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Absolute Flash, issue 7. I feel like people are very hard on this book. I actually like it, and I think there's enough twists and turns to hook me, and I like this issue for the ending, where we get to see Wally's in a place where he doesn't know where to go next and very hungry. I think they might have overdone the hunger in this issue, but he ends up joining the Rogues, and you're like, okay, that's gonna be super interesting, all while his dad's being manipulated. The original artist on this book is also back, so the art is really, really good. So I like the direction for this book, and I'm along for the ride, and I think people are a little harsh on it. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that's number 4. The time you've been waiting for, the topic of the video. Number 3 for me is Deadpool Batman issue 1. I'll show you, I got a couple of covers. Of course, I got the Jeff cover, that was my favorite. Then I got the Gauntlet cover, so that was cool because it featured a lot of the characters from the story. And then I did get the Mark Bagley foil cover. So I got a few because you have to celebrate this cool kind of thing happening in comics that we never thought would happen. Also, I should mention I got the ash cam for DCKO because I'm super excited for that. That is probably the event I'm most excited for. But yeah, let's talk about this book. Was it worth the hype? Yes, but surprisingly in a different direction. I thought the Batman Deadpool story was the weakest aspect of this book. And I'll say I was hesitant of Deadpool being the feature character instead of someone like Spider-Man, because I'm like, all right, he's a little jarring, but let's see. You know, I remember thinking the breaking the fourth wall element could be really interesting for his character as we have this big moment of Marvel and DC finally crossing over after so many years. And I don't feel like the book broke the fourth wall enough. I feel like you kind of had his more jarring elements to Deadpool's character balanced with Batman's character, which again, on paper that makes sense. He's the whimsy guy, and then you have the dark and brooding guy, and they're teaming up. But for me, as someone who's not a hardcore Deadpool fan, there's just elements that were a little annoying to me. I just couldn't get into the story because I'm not a personal Deadpool fan, which out of this big mainstream book, you probably should have picked a safer character like a Spider-Man. I think could have been a more fun adventure between Batman and Deadpool, or again, lean into the fourth wall breaking. Talk about how big of a deal it is that DC and Marvel are crossing over. I think the jokes could have been a little harder there. But what I liked a lot about this issue was everything else. I really liked all the other stories where we get to see Jeff and Crypto team up, and Hawkeye and Supergirl both getting their pets to go back home. I love the Wonder Woman and Captain America story because I think it really highlights the difference between Marvel and DC. Marvel does tackle more events that happen in our world and is more grounded, while DC is a bit more, fantastical. So to see Wonder Woman deal with a character like Hitler or a person like Hitler was really interesting to me, and see how Captain America and Wonder Woman collide with that and get to know each other because of a situation like that. I thought that was the best story, with wonderful artwork. And then you had fun stories like, again, Green Arrow and Daredevil, where you had some really interesting references. You have Matt's father's glove be the end of Green Arrow's glove. You have references to his previous series. You have the Iowa Hawkeyes have a reference in that story. I just thought that was a lot of fun. And again, I mentioned the pet story already. Another one that was really fun was Rocket Raccoon going with Hal Jordan and being part of OA and being part of the Green Lantern Corps. That's where I feel like they utilized the differences of Marvel and DC in a really cool way, where I don't think Deadpool and Batman did as well. But overall, is it worth the hype? I think it was fun. I don't know if it was worth the hype. I'll say that I don't know if it met every expectation in the past 20 years that I've wanted for this crossover, but that's what's hard about having a crossover so many years later and taking so long to do something like this and making it very small. There's only 2 issues that they're doing this with, so I feel like that's what makes it hard with the hype, is that the hype is going to be so high and it's going to be really hard to meet those expectations. But I did have fun as a comic book fan, and I'm just glad to see more people at the comic book store because of it, and I hope it makes more fans of comics to come on a weekly basis to get Marvel and DC books, and hopefully they find their new favorite character. All right, so that's my number 3 pick. Moving on to number 2, which is The Seasons, issue 8. I thought this was one of the best issues of the series thus far, as it really hits its thesis statement about art. It's showcasing the different sisters and their view on art, and finally kind of revealing that the circus is the audience. It's that the circus of life. When you put your art out there, how do people react to it? So you have this more upper brow character with her art, where she's like, I don't care about an audience, and we see her utilize that against the crowd. And then you have the sister, who is more of an actor and more of a stage actress, and more about the paparazzi and how she views art and how she views people. And I thought it was a really interesting issue, again, about art and the artists and how they view their product and how people view their product. So I just thought it was a really interesting thesis that was really nailed down with this issue. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. All right, moving on to number 1. If you guys have seen the show before, you probably aren't surprised, and that is Runaways issue 4. I feel like this is exactly what I love about Runaways, and what I love about Rainbow's Runaways in particular is when everything hits the fan. When you have all that build up and it's worth it. We get to see even some reveals of this world where Nico and Gert have this power together to unleash Nico's magic, which I thought was really cool and an unlikely dynamic. All these relationships come to a head as Alex and Carolina and Chase come to the group and, kind of butt heads because of it. I love Carolina and Nico's reunion. We've been waiting a really long time for that. All while you're tying into this kind of bigger story with Doombot and Dr. Doom, with the reason why we have this series. And I love how Doombot ends and he leaves and he tells everyone exactly what they should be doing and how they can improve their lives. I just felt like it was so Runaways, and it tied into the event pretty well and it moved the plot very well. It's just, again, Rainbow at her best and the Runaways at their best, and why I love these characters and this franchise. And it's such a great slice of life superhero story that I feel like more people should be giving a chance. So giving that one 4.5 stars. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was. Last week's viewer pick of the week was Space Ghost, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.